My name is Sophia Brennan. I'm 37 years old. 18 years ago, my parents disowned me for getting pregnant at 19. They signed papers, erased me from their lives, and told everyone I'd moved overseas. For 18 years, I built a life without them. Then last month, they showed up at my restaurant in Chicago, desperate, smiling, and demanding to meet the grandson they'd been bragging about for months to 200 of their most influential friends. They offered me $300,000. They had no idea that the grandson they'd invented didn't exist. And what they found instead would tear apart everything they'd spent 40 years building. Let me start at the beginning. Chicago, December 2006. I was 19, a sophomore at DePaul, studying hospitality management. My parents, William and Margaret Brennan, were wealthy real estate developers on the North Shore. On paper, we were the perfect family. My father ran Brennan Properties, one of the largest commercial real estate firms in the Midwest. My mother chaired every charity gala in the city. We sat in the front row at church every Sunday, dressed in coordinated outfits my mother selected the night before. But every family has its hierarchy. My older brother, Daniel, was 23 and already working at the firm, the heir apparent. My sister, Julia, was 21, studying law, destined to marry well. And then there was me. I was what my mother called the late surprise, born when she was 38, 6 years after she thought she was done having children. I don't think she ever forgave me for disrupting her plans. The signs were subtle but constant. Family photos displayed in the living room somehow never included my school portraits. Dinner conversations revolved around Daniel's deals or Julia's law school exams. When I mentioned making the dean's list, my father would nod and say, "That's nice, Sophia," before turning back to Daniel. I learned to make myself small, to not ask for too much, to not need too much. My father had a saying he repeated at every family gathering: a reputation takes 30 years to build and 30 seconds to destroy. I didn't understand then how prophetic those words would become, or that I would be the 30 seconds he feared. I met James Callahan at a food festival downtown. He was 21, a line cook at a small Italian restaurant, and had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. He found me crying on a bench after my mother had forgotten to pick me up from the train station for the 3rd time that month. "Hey," he said, sitting beside me. "You okay?" No one had asked me that in a very long time. We dated secretly for 4 months. He was gentle and patient and made me feel like I mattered. Then came the pregnancy test in the bathroom of a diner near campus. 2 pink lines. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I told James, he didn't run. He held my hands and said, "We'll figure this out together, Sophia. You're not alone." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But I knew my parents. I knew what mattered to them. And I knew that when I told them, their first question wouldn't be, "Are you okay?" It would be, "What will people think?" I decided to tell them at Sunday dinner. I didn't know it would be the last meal I'd ever eat in that house. December 10, 2006. The roast beef was overcooked. I remember that detail because I was staring at it trying to find the courage to speak while my father discussed a zoning dispute and my mother calculated who would attend the Christmas charity ball. "I have something to tell you." The table went quiet. 4 faces turned toward me, my parents, Daniel home for the weekend, Julia visiting from law school. I was 10 weeks pregnant. "I'm pregnant." My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father didn't move. "Who is the father?" His voice was ice. "Is it someone from DePaul? Someone we know?" "His name is James Callahan. He's a cook. He works at a restaurant downtown." My mother's face had gone pale. "A cook? You've been seeing a cook?" "He's a good person, Mom. He's kind." "What does his father do?" my father cut in. His parents passed away. He was raised by his grandmother." The silence that followed lasted 11 seconds. I counted. Then my father stood. "You will not keep this child." Richard, my mother started. She will not destroy everything we've built. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was something that needed to be removed. If you keep that baby, you are no longer part of this family. By 9 that night, I was standing on the front porch with one suitcase, December rain soaking through my sweater. My mother opened the door and pointed outside. Not my father. My mother. Daniel and Julia watched from the upstairs window. Neither of them came down. I called James from a payphone at the gas station on Sheridan Road. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. He picked up on the second ring. Sophia, what's wrong? They kicked me out. 20 minutes later, his grandmother's old Honda pulled up to the gas station. James jumped out before it fully stopped, wrapped me in his jacket, and held me while I sobbed against his chest. I've got you, he said. I've got you. We didn't have a plan. We had $400 between us, a car with questionable brakes, and nowhere to go. That's when Maria Santos saved my life. She was our neighbor, 3 houses down from the Brennan estate, 65 years old, a retired social worker, the only person on our street who didn't treat my father like he owned the neighborhood. She'd seen me standing in the rain from her window. She'd watched long enough to understand. You can stay with me, she said when I knocked on her door at nearly 10 at night. As long as you need. 2 weeks. That's how long we stayed in Mrs. Santos's guest room before James found us a studio apartment in Pilsen. $450 a month above a laundromat that smelled like bleach and secondhand hope. My parents had their lawyer draw up papers the night they threw me out. I know because my father mailed me a copy 3 days later. Certified mail, signature required, like I was a business transaction. The document stated that Sophia Marie Brennan forfeited all inheritance rights and that the Brennan family bore no legal or moral obligation to her or any child born to her. I kept that paper. I've kept it for 18 years. Lucas James Callahan was born on July 19, 2007, at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. 7 pounds, 6 ounces. 10 fingers, 10 toes. His father's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. He came into the world screaming, and I thought, good. Scream. Make them hear you. Don't ever let anyone make you small. The first 5 years were a blur of survival. James worked double shifts at restaurants while I finished my associate degree, then started at Kendall College for culinary arts, whatever I could manage around Lucas's schedule. We lived on beans and rice and free bread from the bakery where James worked. I learned to stretch $1 until it begged for mercy. I sent my parents a birth announcement when Lucas was born. No response. I sent a photo on his first birthday. Silence. By his second birthday, I stopped trying. James and I never got married. We kept saying we would someday when we had money for a real wedding. When life calmed down, someday kept getting pushed back. Then on April 3, 2012, a delivery truck ran a red light on Western Avenue. James was riding his bike home from a night shift. The police officer who came to my door said he died on impact. He was 27 years old. Lucas was 4. The life insurance policy James had through work paid out $15,000. That was it. $15,000 for 27 years of a good man's life. I was 25 years old, a single mother with a 4-year-old son, $15,000, and absolutely no one to call. I could have given up then. I didn't. I'd started doing small catering jobs while James was alive, cooking for neighbors who couldn't afford private chefs, hosting pop-up dinners in borrowed spaces. I had a gift for it, people said. A way of making food that felt like home. After James died, I threw myself into that work like my life depended on it, because it did. 2014, I met Eleanor Chen at a culinary workshop at the chopping block. She was 54, recently retired as executive chef of a Michelin-starred restaurant, and looking for a project. For reasons I still don't fully understand, she chose me. You have talent, she said after tasting my food. Raw, unpolished, but real. Let me help you shape it. 2016, with Eleanor's mentorship and a $75,000 small business loan, I founded Table and Hearth Catering. Our first kitchen was a rented church basement. 2019, 12 employees. Revenue, $1.8 million. 2022, Chicago Magazine ran a feature story on me, From Teen Mom to Culinary CEO, Sophia Brennan's story. The journalist spent 3 days interviewing me about my journey, the pregnancy at 19, being cut off from my family, losing James, building a business from nothing. I told her everything except my parents' names. Not to protect them. To protect Lucas from anyone who might try to connect him to people who never wanted him to exist. 2024, 25 employees. Revenue, $6.7 million. A commercial kitchen in the West Loop. My son was 17, a senior in high school, brilliant and fierce and everything I'd hoped he would become. 18 years, no contact from the Brennan family. Until last month. Tuesday, October 15, 2024. 6:30 p.m. I'd just gotten home from a client meeting, a tech executive launching a new restaurant concept, a contract worth nearly $1 million. My mind was still running through menu options when I turned onto my street and saw the car, a black Lincoln Navigator Illinois plates, but the address on the registration frame was from Winnetka, North Shore. My heart stopped. I parked in my driveway and sat there for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel, watching two figures standing at my front door. The man had gray hair now, stooped shoulders. The woman still held herself with that rigid posture. I remembered that constant vigilance against anything that might disturb her carefully constructed world. William and Margaret Brennan. My parents. I hadn't seen them in 18 years. I considered driving away, going to a hotel, calling Lucas, pretending this wasn't happening. But I was 37 years old. I owned a company. I had built a life without them. I would not run. I walked toward them. My father spoke first. Sophia, you look, he paused, scanning me. My designer coat, my leather bag, my house. Well. What are you doing here? My mother stepped forward. Her face had more lines now, her hair a careful shade of ash blonde that didn't quite match her age. We know about your son, Sophia. We know you have a son. I stared at her. We'd like to meet him, my father added. We'd like to reconnect as a family. The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. 18 years of silence. 18 years of pretending I didn't exist. And now they were standing on my porch asking to meet a grandson they'd never bothered to know. I let them into my house. I still don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear what 18 years of silence had led to. My father sat in my living room like he was evaluating a property for purchase, assessing the hardwood floors, the custom built-ins, the original artwork on the walls. My mother perched on the edge of my sofa, hands folded, spine straight. Your anniversary, I said. That's why you're here. 40 years. My father almost smiled. November 16th. We're hosting a celebration at the Drake Hotel. 300 guests. The mayor will be there, the archbishop, the board of the Art Institute. What does that have to do with me? My mother exchanged a glance with my father. There have been questions, Sophia. About you. About what happened 18 years ago. People talk. Some people remember that we had a third child. They've asked where you are. What happened to you? We've always said you moved away, went abroad. But lately, questions have become more persistent. So you need me to make an appearance. Show everyone that the Brennan family is whole and happy. We need your son. My mother's voice was firm. We've told people about him, about our grandson. He should be there representing the next generation of the Brennan family. The room went very still. Who told you I have a son? We read that article. My father waved his hand dismissively. The magazine piece. It mentioned your child, your successful business. You've done better than we expected. Better than we expected. As if I'd been graded. As if my entire life was a test I might have failed. And if I refuse? My father's jaw tightened. Let's not make this difficult, Sophia. He reached into his leather briefcase and withdrew a check. We're prepared to compensate you. $300,000. You bring your son to the party, stay for 3 hours, take some family photos, then you can return to your life. I looked at the check, then at my mother, who was nodding as if this were the most reasonable proposition in the world. $300,000? I repeated. Is that what 18 years of silence costs? We're also prepared to reinstate you in the family trust. The combined estate is valued at just over $4 million. You would have an equal share with Daniel and Julia. I thought about that studio apartment in Pilsen. The nights I'd worked double shifts while Lucas slept in a playpen behind the counter of a cafe because I couldn't afford childcare. The years I'd spent building something from nothing while they sat in their Winnetka mansion pretending I'd never existed. And if I say no? My father's expression hardened. We would prefer not to involve your son directly, Sophia, but if necessary, we can reach out to him ourselves. Explain the situation. Help him understand his family history. It was a threat. Subtle but unmistakable. You want to contact my son, I said slowly, and tell him your version of what happened? We want to be a family again. My mother spread her hands, the picture of reasonableness. Isn't that what you've always wanted? I was about to answer when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mom, is everything okay? I heard voices. Lucas stopped at the bottom of the stairs, his calculus textbook still in his hand. My mother rose to her feet. Who is this? This is Lucas. My son. Son? My father's voice cracked. But the article said child. We assumed. You assumed the rest. Lucas's gaze moved from me to the strangers in our living room. Understanding dawned in his eyes. These are them? The grandparents who threw you out when you were pregnant with me. My mother flinched. That's not, it was more complicated then. Which part was complicated? Lucas crossed his arms. The part where you kicked a 19-year-old out in the rain, or the part where you spent 18 years pretending she didn't exist? Young man, my father started. I'm not your young man. I'm the grandson you never wanted to meet. The one you tried to make disappear before I was born. Lucas's voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling. I know everything. Mom never hid it from me. I know about the letter. I know about the inheritance papers. I know you told your friend she went abroad. My parents sat in stunned silence. Lucas looked at me. They came here for a grandson, didn't they? Someone they could show off. Yes. He turned back to them with a cold smile. Surprise. My father recovered faster than my mother. A grandson, he said carefully. That works. We can adjust the narrative. Lucas can come to the party as what? Lucas cut in. The secret grandson you've been hiding for 17 years? The son of the teen mom you threw away? We could say you were studying abroad, my mother said, her voice pleading. Recently returned. A surprise reunion. I was born in Chicago. I've never left the country. I'm a senior in high school. Lucas laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you even hear yourselves? You want me to lie to 300 people about my entire existence? The party is November 16th. My father checked his watch, as if time was the only variable that mattered. We need an answer by the end of the week. I stood. I think you should leave. I'll consider what you've said, but not tonight. Not with Lucas here. My mother rose, gathering her handbag. At the door, she turned back. This is an opportunity to heal, Sophia. To put the past behind us. Don't let old wounds cost you your future. I watched them walk to their navigator, watched my father help my mother into the passenger seat the same way he had 1,000 times before, as if this were any ordinary evening. When the car disappeared around the corner, Lucas spoke. "You're not actually considering this, are you?" I looked at my son, this fierce, brilliant young man I'd raised alone. The person William and Margaret Brennan had tried to erase from existence before he was even born. "No," I said. "But I'm not done with them yet." That night, after Lucas went to bed, I pulled a fireproof lockbox from the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were the documents of my erasure, the notarized letter of disinheritance dated December 10, 2006, signed by William Arthur Brennan and Margaret Elizabeth Brennan, witnessed by a notary named Harold Fenton. I remembered the day my father mailed it to me, certified mail, requiring my signature, as if he wanted to make sure I knew exactly how thorough he'd been. The document was 3 pages of legal language designed to be airtight, ensuring that Sophia Marie Brennan hereby forfeits all claims to the Brennan family estate, and that the family bears no legal or moral obligation to the aforementioned party, or any dependents thereof. Any dependents thereof. Lucas, reduced to 3 words in a legal document, erased before he took his first breath. I photographed each page with my phone, uploaded them to my cloud storage, made backup copies. "Mom?" I looked up. Lucas was standing in my doorway, arms wrapped around himself. I couldn't sleep either. He sat beside me on the bed, looking at the documents spread across my comforter. "Is that the letter?" "Yes." He picked up the first page, reading slowly. When he finished, his eyes were bright with tears he refused to let fall. "They really did it. They really just cut you out like you were nothing. They did. What are you going to do with these?" I looked at my son, at the evidence of 18 years of calculated cruelty laid out before us. "I don't know yet. But whatever I do, they won't be able to pretend anymore." Lucas nodded slowly. "I might have an idea." The next morning, I made a call I hadn't made in over a year. Maria Santos answered on the 3rd ring. "Sophia, is that you, sweetheart?" "Mrs. Santos, I hope I'm not calling too early." "At my age, early is relative." "What's wrong? You sound like you've got weight on your shoulders." I told her about my parents' visit, about the grandson they'd invented, the anniversary party, the $300,000. When I finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. "Those people," she finally said. 18 years and they haven't changed one bit. "Mrs. Santos, I need to ask you something." "That night, December 10, 2006, do you remember?" "I remember it like it was yesterday." Her voice hardened. "I watched from my window. Saw you standing in the rain with that little suitcase at your feet. Watched your parents' car drive away. I should have come out sooner. I've regretted that every day since." "Do you still have your security camera footage from back then?" A pause. "You know, I never delete anything. Old social worker habit. Document everything. Let me check my files." 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email. A grainy but unmistakable image, a 19-year-old girl standing on a porch in the rain. 9:17 p.m., December 10, 2006. The timestamp was visible in the corner. The address, my parents' house, was partially visible in the frame. "That's you," Mrs. Santos said when I called her back. "That's the night they threw you away. Would you be willing to verify this officially if needed?" "Honey, I've been waiting 18 years for someone to ask." Her voice was fierce. "Whatever you need, I'm there." 2 weeks later, I sat in my dining room with Lucas and Eleanor. The party was 4 days away. "They want a performance," Eleanor said, swirling her wine. "They want you to show up, smile for the cameras, validate 18 years of lies. They want to use you," Lucas added. "The same way they've always used you, as something to manage, not someone to love." I looked at both of them, my mentor, my son. The family I'd built for myself. "I'm going to that party," I said. Lucas's head snapped up. "Mom." Not to give them what they want. To give myself what I need. I pulled out my phone, showing them the photos of the disinheritance letter, Mrs. Santos's security footage, the Chicago Magazine article. They've spent 18 years controlling my story. Telling people I went abroad. Inventing a grandson. Making me disappear. And you want to undisappear? Eleanor said slowly. I want to tell the truth. In front of everyone who matters to them. On their stage, at their party, during their perfect celebration. I took a breath. Not to humiliate them. To stop letting them pretend I don't exist. I'm coming with you. Lucas's voice was firm. They need to see who I really am. Not their imaginary grandson. Me. I reached for his hand. Are you sure? This could be. I've spent my whole life knowing that my grandparents chose their reputation over my existence. I'm sure. Saturday, November 16, 2024, 6:30 p.m. The grand ballroom at the Drake Hotel was everything my parents would have chosen: chandeliers dripping crystal, white tablecloths starched to precision, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Pilsen. 300 guests in formal attire, clutching champagne flutes, making small talk about investment portfolios and vacation homes. I stood in the entrance with Lucas beside me. You okay? He whispered. I'm about to crash my parents' 40th anniversary party to tell 300 people they've been lying for 18 years. I squeezed his hand. I'm terrified. That's not what I asked. I looked at him, this incredible young man who'd grown up knowing his grandparents had tried to erase him, who'd built his own strength from that knowledge instead of letting it break him. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. We walked in. The room was arranged around a raised platform at the far end where my parents would give their speeches. A photographer was already set up. And there they were, William and Margaret Brennan, standing on that stage surrounded by well-wishers. My mother in champagne silk, my father in a tailored navy suit, both of them glowing with the confidence of people who believed they'd won. They hadn't noticed us yet. But heads were starting to turn. Someone near the door whispered, "Is that the daughter from the magazine?" The whisper spread like ripples in water. My father had just begun his speech. 40 years of marriage has taught me that family is everything. Margaret and I have built our lives around that principle. Our children, our community, our faith. His voice carried across the ballroom. 300 faces watched adoringly. My mother saw me first. Her champagne smile froze. I watched her hand tighten on my father's arm. He followed her gaze, stopped mid-sentence. The room began to notice. Heads turning, whispers building. Someone near the back said loud enough to carry, "That's her. That's the chef from the article. That's William's daughter. I thought she was in Europe." My father recovered first. As I was saying, family has always. I started walking toward the stage. Lucas walked beside me, his chin high, his step steady. Daniel appeared at the edge of the crowd. Julia beside him. They didn't try to stop me. They just watched. Sophia, my father said into the microphone, his voice strained. What a surprise. We weren't expecting. I climbed the 3 steps to the platform. Hello, Dad. I took the microphone from his hand before he could react. Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Brennan. For those of you who don't know me, and many of you don't, I'm William and Margaret's youngest daughter. I paused. The one they told you went to Europe 18 years ago. The silence in that ballroom was absolute. I didn't go to Europe. I continued. On December 10, 2006, 18 years ago last month, my parents discovered I was pregnant at 19. That same night, they threw me out of their house. They had their lawyer draft papers disowning me. They told me I was dead to them. Someone gasped. They told everyone I'd gone abroad. For 18 years, they pretended I didn't exist. I reached into my bag and pulled out the notarized letter. This is the document my father mailed me 3 days after throwing me out. It states that I forfeit all inheritance rights and that the Brennan family has no obligation to me, or, I quote, any dependents thereof. I held it up. That dependent is my son, Lucas. I gestured to where he stood at the edge of the stage. Your grandson, who you've never met. The grandson you've been telling your friends about for months doesn't exist. You invented him based on a magazine article you didn't read carefully. My father grabbed for the microphone. Sophia, this isn't the place. When is the place, Dad? I held the mic out of his reach. When is the right time to tell the truth? You came to my house last month offering me $300,000 to parade a fictional grandson at this party. $300,000 to make your lie look real. I turned to the crowd, to the 300 witnesses. I didn't come here for money. I came here because I'm done being erased. Pastor Michael stepped forward. William, is this true? My father couldn't answer. My mother started crying. I'd only seen Margaret Brennan cry once in my entire childhood, at her own mother's funeral. Now tears streamed down her face, ruining the careful makeup she'd spent hours perfecting. William. The pastor's voice was firm. I asked you a question. Is what your daughter's saying true? The room held its breath. My father looked at the crowd, the mayor, the Art Institute board members, the church elders who had respected him for decades. I watched him calculate, search for an angle, try to find words that would spin this into something acceptable. He couldn't find them. It was a difficult time, he finally said. We made decisions that. You threw me out because I was pregnant. My voice stayed calm. Because your reputation mattered more than your child. Daniel stepped onto the stage, then Julia. They stood beside me, not touching, but present. She's telling the truth, Daniel said, his voice carrying through the room. Julia and I were there that night. We watched from the window while our parents put our 19-year-old sister out in the rain. We never said anything. That was our failure. The whispers became a roar. I could see people pulling out phones, recording. The mayor was already moving toward the exit. Mrs. Santos, I pointed to her in the back row, our neighbor from 18 years ago. She saw everything. She has photos. Timestamps. Maria Santos stood, her chin lifted. I watched that child stand in the rain for 10 minutes before she walked away. I gave her a place to sleep. The Brennan family never once asked where she went. I handed the microphone back to my father. He took it reflexively, like a man in shock. I didn't come here to destroy you, I said quietly enough that only those on stage could hear. I came here to stop being invisible. Then I turned back to the crowd. I'm not asking for your pity. I don't need it. 18 years ago, I was thrown out with nothing. Today, I own a catering company in Chicago with 25 employees and nearly $7 million in annual revenue. My son is a high school senior, headed to college next fall. We built our lives without the Brennan family's help. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my parents tried to buy my silence last month. $300,000 to pretend their lies were true. I'm here because they deserve to face the consequences of what they did, not in private, but in front of the community they valued more than their own children. Lucas climbed onto the stage and took my hand. I'm Lucas, he said into the microphone. The grandson they never wanted. I'm 17 years old. I've known my whole life that my grandparents chose their reputation over my mother, and by extension over me. He looked at William and Margaret. You could have known me. You could have watched me grow up. You could have been at my birthday parties, my school plays, my first job. You chose not to. And now you don't get to pretend that was ever my fault. He handed back the microphone and walked off the stage. I followed him. Behind us, the ballroom erupted into chaos. At the door, I turned back one last time. One more thing. My voice cut through the noise. I'm not going to sue you. I'm not going to contest the will or demand money. The disinheritance papers you signed 18 years ago, I'm keeping them as a reminder of who you really are, not as a weapon. I looked at my father. But understand this. If you ever spread lies about me or my son again, if you ever try to contact Lucas without his consent or spin some new story about us for your friends, I will make every document I have public. I have the disinheritance letter. I have time-stamped photos. I have witnesses. And now I have 300 witnesses to this conversation. Eleanor appeared at my elbow. Ready? Yes. As we walked through the doors, I heard the pastor's voice. William, Margaret, I think we need to talk privately tonight. Lucas squeezed my hand as we stepped into the November evening. The air was cold and clean, and for the first time in 18 years, I felt like I could breathe. Mom, he said quietly. Did we do the right thing? I thought about 19-year-old Sophia standing in the rain with a suitcase and a baby she hadn't planned for. I thought about all the years of building, surviving, fighting to become someone worth being. We told the truth, I said. We set a boundary. We let them face the consequences of their own choices. I pulled him into a hug. That's not revenge. That's justice. What happens now? Now we go home. The fallout began within hours. By midnight, the video clip had been shared over 1,000 times. By morning, that number had tripled. Nearly 100 guests left the party within 30 minutes of my departure. I learned this from Daniel, who called me Sunday morning with a full report. The mayor walked out without saying goodbye to Dad. By Monday, my father had resigned his position as deacon at the church. For personal reasons, the church bulletin stated, but everyone knew. By Wednesday, the Art Institute board announced they would be reviewing membership criteria. My father's name was specifically mentioned. And through it all, I was in Chicago answering emails from potential clients. The following week, a reporter from Chicago Magazine called, the same journalist who'd written my profile 2 years earlier. Sophia, I don't know if you've seen, but your video is everywhere. We'd love to do a follow-up piece. The CEO who confronted her past. What do you think? I thought about it. Let me get back to you. Of course. Just know the response has been overwhelming. People are connecting with your story. A lot of them have similar experiences. She wasn't wrong. My company's general inbox was flooded with messages, not about catering, but about family. About being cut off. About spending years feeling invisible and finally finding the courage to speak. Your video made me call my brother for the first time in 10 years. I'm a teen mom too. You gave me hope. Thank you for showing that success is the best response to people who tried to destroy you. 2 weeks after the party, Daniel and Julia came to Chicago for the first time in 18 years. We sat in my living room, the same room where my parents had tried to buy my silence, and talked for hours. Daniel told me about the years of guilt. Julia cried when she met Lucas for the first time. I'm sorry, Daniel said. I know it's not enough. I know sorry doesn't cover 18 years. No, I agreed. It doesn't. But it's a start. Lucas watched from the doorway, this young man who'd grown up without extended family, finally seeing what it might look like to have one. Imperfect, complicated, but real. A week later, my phone rang with a Winnetka number. My mother. Sophia. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I'm not calling to apologize. I don't know how to apologize for what we did. Then why are you calling? A long silence. I watched the video. The one from the party. I've watched it 11 times. Another pause. I keep looking at your face when you're talking. Trying to see my daughter. The one I put out in the rain. I said nothing. Your father is, she trailed off. He's not doing well. The church, the Art Institute, his colleagues. Everyone is looking at him differently now. He doesn't know how to handle it. I didn't do this to punish him. Or you. I know. I know that now. Her voice cracked. You did it because you had to stop pretending. You did it because we gave you no other choice. Why did you call, Mom? The longest silence yet. Because I wanted to hear your voice. Because I haven't heard it in 18 years, and I realized I might never hear it again. She was crying now. Because my grandson stood on that stage and told 300 people he'd spent his whole life knowing we didn't want him. And I couldn't breathe. I closed my eyes. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. I might never be. But I'm not going to hang up on you either. That's more than I deserve. Yes. It is. We stayed on the line for another minute, not speaking. Then she said goodbye. She didn't ask for another chance. She didn't demand anything. Maybe that was progress. Or maybe it was just the first step of a very long road. Thanksgiving 2024. My dining table, the one I'd bought 3 years ago from an estate sale and refinished myself, seated 14. It had never been this full. Lucas sat at my right hand. Mrs. Santos, who'd flown up from her new place in Florida, was teaching my niece how to fold napkins into swans. Daniel carved the turkey while Julia set out dishes. My parents weren't there. We hadn't reached that point. Maybe we never would. But looking around that table, I realized something. I'd spent 18 years mourning a family that had never really wanted me. Now I was surrounded by people who'd chosen to be here, who wanted to know me. Not a version of me, not a prop for their image, but me. Lucas stood to make a toast. I wrote something for Mom. He pulled out a folded paper. When I was little, I used to ask why I didn't have grandparents like the other kids. Mom always told me the truth, that they'd made a choice, and that choice wasn't about me. It took me years to really understand that. He looked at me. But I understand now. And I know that everything I have, everything I am, is because you never let their choice define us. He raised his glass. To the family we build, not the one we're born into. Everyone drank. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the guests were scattered through my house drinking coffee, I stood at the kitchen window. Lucas appeared beside me. You okay? I looked at my son. At this life I'd assembled from the ruins of everything I thought I'd lost. Yeah, I said. I really am. If you're still listening, let me leave you with this. 18 years ago, I was a scared 19-year-old standing in the rain, watching my parents' taillights disappear down the street. I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left. I was wrong. I had James for as long as I could have him. I had Mrs. Santos, who opened her door when she didn't have to. I had Eleanor, who saw potential in a young mother with nothing but determination. I had Lucas, who grew up knowing the truth and chose to be fierce instead of bitter. And eventually, I had myself, the version of me who stopped asking for permission to exist. If you're in a situation where your family makes you feel like you need to shrink yourself to be acceptable, like your worth depends on their approval, I understand. I've been there. But here's what I know now. You don't need their validation to know your value. Setting boundaries isn't revenge, it's survival. And sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you were born into. My parents still haven't apologized. Not really. My father has barely spoken since the party. My mother calls occasionally, and I answer when I can. Daniel and Julia are trying. We're all trying. But I'm not waiting for them to change. I'm living my life. The one I built, the one I earned, the one that belongs entirely to me. That's not a happy ending. It's a real one. And real endings, they don't need applause. They just need truth. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, if it made you feel less alone, please share it, like, subscribe, and check the description for more stories like this one. Because everyone deserves to be seen.